Today's text of the day is Mars probe lost due to simple math error. It's a newspaper text which was published in Los Angeles Times in October 1999. Our learning goal today is to examine the structure of a newspaper text. The reason I chose this article is not only is it a good example of a newspaper article, but you'll all understand how to convert units. And you can see that NASA, at the time the world's premier space agency, made a really silly mistake. It just goes to show you that even the smartest people still make mistakes, but hopefully we can learn from them. Let's have a look at the article. Mars probe lost due to simple math error by Robert Lee Hotz, Los Angeles Times, October the 1st, 1999. NASA lost its $125 million Mars Climate Orbiter because spacecraft engineers failed to convert from imperial to metric measurements when exchanging vital data before the craft was launched, space agency officials said Thursday. A navigation team at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory used the metric system of millimeters and meters in its calculations, while Lockheed Martin Astronautics in Denver, which designed and built the spacecraft, provided crucial acceleration data in the imperial or English system of inches, feet, and pounds. As a result, JPL engineers mistook acceleration readings measured in English or imperial units of pounds, seconds for a metric measure of force called Newton seconds. In a sense, the spacecraft was lost in translation. "That is so dumb," said John Logston, director of George Washington University Space Policy Institute. "There seems to have emerged over the past couple of years a systematic problem in the space community of insufficient attention to detail." "It was launched that way," said Noel Hinners, vice president for flight systems at Lockheed Martin Space Systems Group. "We were transmitting English units and they were expecting metric units. The normal thing to use is metrics and to specify that." None of JPL's rigorous quality control procedures caught the error in the 9 months it took the spacecraft to make its 461 million mile flight to Mars. Over the course of the journey, the miscalculations were enough to throw the spacecraft so far off track that it flew too deeply into the Martian atmosphere and was destroyed when it entered its initial orbit around Mars last week. John Pike, Space Policy Director at the Federation of American Scientists, said that it was embarrassing to lose a spacecraft to such a simple math error. "It is very difficult for me to imagine how such a fundamental, basic discrepancy could have remained in the system for so long," he said. "I can't think of another example of this kind of large loss due to imperial versus metric confusion," Pike said. "It is going to be the cautionary tale until the end of time." Newspaper articles are a very specific style and form of writing. In order to understand how newspaper articles are written, have a look at the inverted pyramid news writing diagram at the top of the page. Information that is critical to understanding the news story, the information the reader must know, is given in the first 1 or 2 sentences. This means the first paragraph summarizes the whole interesting story. The title and the first 1 or 2 sentences also needs to grab the reader's attention. People who read newspapers flick through the pages, reading the title and the first sentence or 2 of each article to decide if they are going to read on. So it's important to entice the reader at the very start. The most important information is contained in the top orange brackets. We can also see the basics: who, what, where, when, and why in the first sentence. Who? NASA. What? Mars Climate Orbiter. Where? Mars. When? Thursday. Why? Conversion failure. I've underlined these for you. The language in the first paragraph is succinct and precise. There is nothing that is not essential. The second paragraph of the article consists of the information that is interesting and helpful, but not essential in understanding the main idea. This is surrounded by the blue brackets. Knowledge of the exact nature of the conversion failure, imperial to metric, and the teams that were responsible, underlined in this paragraph, is information that is nice to have and helps to create a bigger picture. The language in this paragraph is still precise, but not as succinct as the first paragraph. The line, "In a sense, the spacecraft was lost in translation," sums up the article in a sophisticated way, alluding to the well-known idiom "lost in translation." You can see it highlighted in aqua. The information contained in the final paragraphs is interesting and helps to round out the article. But remember, a good newspaper article has to work even if the reader only reads the first paragraph or two and report the news in the first sentence. Where possible, a good newspaper article will include statements or quotes from important people in relation to the article. This gives weight or authority to the article. Through the quotes in the article, we can see that how the scientific community have received the news of such a silly mistake. But also, we can see one of the parties to the mistake, Lockheed Martin, defend themselves and say metric units are standard. This implies that the $125 million mistake is the responsibility of the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. It'd be interesting to see an article where someone from the Jet Propulsion Laboratory had responded. The final quote from John Pike, Space Policy Director at the Federation of American Scientists, that the loss of the Mars probe is a cautionary tale, is a very effective way to conclude the article. We know that there was a mistake, and where possible, we learn from our mistakes. The term cautionary tale is a well-known phrase which refers to stories that give a warning to people. What better cautionary tale to remind you and me to check your maths work than the loss of a $125 million space probe? So have a look at the text, compare it to our inverted pyramid news writing triangle, and think about the articles that you have read in the newspaper or are going to read in the newspaper. And next time you pick up an article, see if you can pick the 3 components of a very effective newspaper article. Hopefully the information in this article has been of interest to you. Thanks, guys.